So thank you very much, everybody, for coming, and a very, very warm welcome to each and every one of you to the launch of the Mother side of the Perspex, an exhibition about mothering in NICU. I am delighted that you've all chosen to support this event, and I hope you'll find it an interesting and enjoyable experience. I'm Sushila Chowdhury. I'm a member of the Mother and Infant Research Unit and School of Health Sciences at University of Dundee. I'm the lead researcher on this project, and I'm going to introduce you to the event, to the speakers, tell you a little bit about the project, and host the Q&A. We're keeping the microphones off tonight, so if you have any issues, if you can just pop your issue into the chat. We're also going to have some questions. Hopefully we'll still have time for some questions in a while. And if you would put your questions in block capitals, Rachel is going to help me identify the questions, and she'll read some questions out when we get to that part. So this is to celebrate the launch of the exhibition. I've invited a really exciting lineup of speakers, along with a poetry reading by award-winning writer Rachel Bauer. But before I go on to introduce the speakers, I'll tell you a little bit about the project, the exhibits, and how the exhibits were created. So the Mother side of the Perspex is a collective work of 10 mothers who spent time in NICU following the birth of their preterm babies. They volunteered to take part in an arts-based participatory project involving 6 online workshops during 2021. And these workshops were facilitated by myself and 3 artists: Maya Chowdhury, a digital artist, Jessica Howarth, a material artist, and Rachel Bauer, a writer. In the workshops, we explored the embodied aspects of mothering, and so we looked at touch and eye contact and breastfeeding and lactation and pumping. And following the workshops, the participants selected the pieces that they wanted to become part of the exhibition, and also those that they wanted to discuss in a research interview with myself. And the participants opted to have their own web page, which would house their individual pieces, but they wanted these to be connected together by a single gallery, because they said that that resonated something about the experience and the feeling of community, which they emerged over the course of the workshops. And each exhibit has been interpreted for you, the audience, and to reveal the lived experience of that aspect of mothering in NICU. For all the participants, mothering in NICU had been preceded by preterm birthing, often due to complications of pregnancy, a painful, scary and worrying time, the trauma of which was still present for many of the participants, although for some it was more of a distant memory. The participants described the workshop as a gentle way to explore individually and collectively the experience of mothering in NICU. And what we did was we used leaflets about talking to your baby, feeding, skin to skin, and eye contact as a starting point. And the participants repurposed these images and the text to create their own stories of NICU mothering. And they opted to do this through creative writing, collage, video, and soundscape making. So while the workshop experience was viewed as valuable itself, there was also a real enthusiasm for letting the world know about their experience through the art, about what it's like to mother in NICU. And we very much hope that the exhibition will reveal some of the more hidden aspects of mothering in NICU and provide a means for discussion and reflection. So having introduced the background of the exhibition, I'd like to welcome our first guest, Rachel Bauer, who's going to read a collective poem written by all the participants during the first workshop. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you, Sushila. Can you hear me? Just give me a nod. Yeah, I'm less familiar with Teams. It's really wonderful to be here and lovely to see so many people here. Well done, and thank you for persevering. Yeah, it was a real privilege to work with the women and the team on these workshops, and an honour to share their stories. And one of the things that we did was to make some collective poems together. And as Sheila said, I'm just going to read one of those poems now. So the poem is called You Come From, and it's a poem that was addressed to the women's babies. So it's addressed to the babies. You come from half-moon blankets, from barriers and gauze, from wires, from skin to skin, machines, harsh and soft, jagged. You come from gold threads in blue muslin cloths, from one stitch at a time. You come from pandemic masks, heart cleft in two, from anger, from not being allowed, from hours on my chest. You come from tears, soft head. You come from love. So thank you for listening to that. I'm just going to pass back to Sheila, and I can't wait to hear the other speakers and see, share this exhibition with the world. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Rachel. That was beautiful. And I know that the participants really enjoyed you reading their poetry, because you've just got a way of doing it that's amazing. So thank you so much for agreeing and volunteering to come and take part along with the other speakers. So I'm delighted. Hopefully our first speaker, Rachel Burden, is here. It's always going to be a little bit ropey as to whether people have found their way here. There she is, fabulous. Rachel is a BBC Radio 5 breakfast presenter, and she's going to talk about her experience of NICU following the preterm birth of her son Henry. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. And Rachel, that was a beautiful poem. It was just lovely to listen to, and also actually made me think that my experience predates the pandemic by several years. So I count myself very lucky that I didn't have the extra challenges that must have brought. So I was just asked really to write a little bit about my experience in NICU, which in some ways feels like a distant memory now, but in some ways feels still very, very real and vivid. So here we go. Walking into a neonatal unit for the first time is like walking into a cocoon. The lights are low, strange, unfamiliar noises. The world outside stops. Nothing else is important. The only thing that matters is right here in this room. You and your tiny baby in a cot which looks more like a spaceship than the crib you had prepared at home. All wires and machines and blue lights. And that first experience is scary, but also reassuring, because you are surrounded by an army of baby nurses and doctors who work with a quiet efficiency, logging every action, every intervention with military precision. You, the mother, are completely reliant on them to guide you through the uneasy world of caring for a tiny baby. I spent 10 days in the high dependency unit at Burnley with my little boy Henry before being moved to Macclesfield Hospital. When I returned a few months later to catch up with a consultant, they carefully talked me through everything that had happened to me and the decisions that were taken, with some urgency at the time when I was 31 weeks pregnant. And then they asked for my feedback. How had my experience been? How was I feeling about it now? And I replied with complete honesty, they had been some of the most magical days of my life. Before I explain why, I should probably also say that I don't want to minimise the stress and trauma of giving birth to a premature baby. I don't want to be flippant about the experience of so many families spending months in the unit, terrified each day about which way the various grafts are going to go. And in some cases, of course, the challenges don't stop at NICU when you leave. Depending on the level of care your child needs, there are repeated hospital visits, learning to support a child on oxygen, feeding challenges, worries about the lifelong consequences of your baby entering the world so early. New parents are thrown into this storm every single day. We were lucky. Henry arrived unexpectedly when I developed preeclampsia in the final stages of my 4th pregnancy. The other 3 had been completely normal, and I arrogantly assumed this one would be the same. Other than my age, I had no risk factors for any complications, so I didn't spot the signs, the swelling, the breathlessness, and feeling generally unwell. When it was diagnosed, my hospital couldn't take a 31-weeker, so Burnley was the nearest option, about an hour and a half from home. Which is why I found myself one Friday in February 7 years ago, at that time preparing to travel to Glasgow for work just a couple of days later, my life mapped out in military fashion with no room for disruption, slowly coming to the realisation that we were going to have to do things differently this time, as the consultant patiently tried to help me realise I wouldn't be leaving the hospital anytime soon. I found myself giving up responsibility for my life and that of my baby and handing myself over to the care of these brilliant medics who knew better than I did how to take care of us. And so for the first time since I could genuinely remember, I totally gave up control. I accepted that I was, in effect, a passenger in this. And yes, I could take decisions about the route which I would take, but ultimately these people knew how to drive the car and make sure we got there in one piece far better than me. We didn't have much time to prepare for Henry's arrival, as my blood pressure was stubbornly refusing to come down and was slowly creeping up and up. But they assured me that they cared for these tiny babies every day, and this one was a feeder and a grower. All we needed to do was get him out safely. He was born by C-section on the 21st of February. He looked like a small, hairless marsupial. I had a brief glimpse before he was whisked away and wrapped in a plastic bag, while the consultant was tugging away at my belly to put me back together again, like zipping up a stubborn sleeping bag. I slept that strange post-epidural sleep, and the next day my husband came to wheel me down to NICU, into that cocoon. It all felt like it was happening to someone else. Who was this child that I couldn't touch and kiss and smell and hold? But amazingly quickly, this became my new world. The 3 children at home I didn't worry about. They had their dad and loving grandparents who would sort them out. They didn't really need me right now. All I had to think about was learning to care for this little creature and trying to produce enough milk for him. So for 10 days, I enjoyed the solitary peace of a nun. Very few visitors, nothing to think about, no washing, no hoovering, no job, no homework, no organising everyone. Just gradually restoring myself and getting to know this child. I sat peacefully by his cot, sometimes reading and then pumping, always pumping, and then heading back to my room to eat. It was all about getting those calories in. Feeling slightly guilty about being away from the cot, but also grateful for the sleep, except for the nightly blood pressure checks and tests. And then I began to hold him, to tuck him inside my top, sometimes wary of bothering him too much, but desperate to be physically close to him. It was slow progress, but eventually the weight came little by little, and the mask and then the tubes were removed, and the doctor said it was time to let him go. He'd outgrown the high dependency unit, and there were other families who needed that care and attention more than we did. And we were excited to get back closer to home so Henry's siblings could visit more regularly and we could begin to resume something that looked like normal life. Macclesfield was wonderful. Less stressful because the babies were less poorly, more colourful, it had windows, and very loving, which is just as well because my insistence in trying to get that baby on the boob meant we watched other babies come and go while Henry remained a skinny little mite, until eventually one of the nurses said if we didn't give him a bottle, he'd be leaving in his school trousers. Within a week, he came home, the absolute joy of that moment, along with dozens of frozen bottles of my milk and actually feeding reasonably well for me. But I will never forget our precious time in NICU together. My life and his had never been so precarious, but in that cocoon, we felt so safe. He is still a skinny little man, but he's the tallest in his class and running around the playground is happily no different to any of his classmates. A special care baby, but just a normal kid. I never expected to be so dependent on the NHS as we were in that time of our lives. No parent does, but we learned so much from it. And to say you learn to be grateful for the smallest things, the gentle touch of a neonatal nurse, the reassurance that your milk is amazing, the nightly toast back on the ward, the time given to you by the consultants to ask all the questions you need. To say we were grateful, couldn't begin to describe it, and I will always treasure it. So thank you for listening to our story and for inviting me to be part of this wonderful event.
Thank you so much, Rachel. That was wonderful. And what a wonderful beginning to the rest of the event speakers. You've set the scene beautifully. Thank you very much for sharing that. So I'm hoping that Lottie King is on the call somewhere. Lottie, have you managed to get here? I'm just hoping it depends how. Oh,
yes.
Fabulous.
Can you see me? Hi.
Welcome, Lottie. Lottie is the founder of Leo's Neonatal charity. She's also a NICU mother herself. And Lottie's going to tell us about the work that the charity does and the kind of things that families want help with when they come to the charity. Thank you, Lottie.
Oh, thank you for having me. And wow, what an amazing project this is, and how great of Rachel for their talks and poems. They were gorgeous. I'm gonna just load up my screen. Hopefully it'll work. I'm not great with Teams. I'm a Zoom person, so bear with me. I'll see if I can find my there we go, my presentation. I think that's worked. There we go. Right. Can everyone see that? Oh, bear with.
Yes, that's fine, Lottie.
Right, brilliant. Okay, fab. Right. Okay. So as Sheila said, my name is Lottie, and I am the founder of Leo's. We are a charity based in the northeast of England, primarily looking after the mental health of families who are receiving neonatal care and the care that they need for months or years after. I'm a neonatal mum. I had twins, Leo and Oscar, back in 2015. And unfortunately, Leo, my firstborn twin, he passed away after 4 hours. And Oscar arrived 4 days later at 25 weeks and spent 109 days on the neonatal unit at North Tees in Stockton. And it was my journey and the journey of people that I met along the way that kind of sparked Leo's and the work we do. So this is me. So I'm also alongside kind of being Leo's. I'm a proud mum to Dax, who is 11, Leo and Oscar, who are both 8, and Molly, who is 5 months old. I've kind of pre-warned you a little bit about my journey. But to kick off, I wanted to talk a bit about the aftermath of the neonatal unit and why we kind of do what we do so much aftercare. A lot of parents kind of, when we talk to them on a daily basis, these are the types of things that they tell us, that, you know, home means that it's all okay now. Being told that your baby would be delayed because they've been born early or they've been born poorly and they've needed intensive care treatment, and what does that look like? If you've got a baby with an NG or oxygen or who's just slightly smaller, you know, what if people are going to make comments about that, and what do you say to that when you're outside your home or your comfort zone? We see a lot of parents who come in who have had a shortened neonatal stay, who feel really bad for asking for help because people that they were in neonates with or in our care with have been in longer. Struggling with recognizing themselves. Trauma plays a huge role in identity, and people just don't feel the same person that they walked in neonates as they came out. Friends and family not understanding, because ultimately I think sometimes people kind of think that, oh, it's happened and everything's okay now, but actually for a lot of families, neonates and the trauma and the ongoing needs of the child lasts, you know, for some people a lifetime. Being afraid to leave the house because of germs. I think we've all been, you know, very afraid of COVID and flu this season, and RSV, and every winter we kind of hear the same thing. And I'm just going to move this little thing, and feeling on edge all the time. We're put under immense stress in the neonatal unit, and that stress continues on. And one of my, there we go. So one of the quotes that we work with repeatedly at Leo's is, when your reality is not seen or known, that is the trauma. And a lot of the time we find when families come home or when they're in the neonatal unit that people don't see what is actually happening. You might give a text message or give someone an update and just say that you're fine, but actually really what's happening is quite heavy going and is very upsetting and distressing. So who are we? So we are an award-winning lived experience-led charity that supports the mental health and wellbeing of families in the northeast of England. We work through a trauma-informed and sensory-informed lens and ensure that every person coming through the doors at Leo's has their individual needs met. So it's not a one-size-fits-all service. Everyone is cared for individually and gets the best care for them. So we have a team of mentors. This is us at the minute. We all have lived neonatal experience. So some of us have got neonatal loss experience, twin pregnancy, emergency C-section, being in during COVID, children with long-term disabilities, and our service is there, like I said earlier, to provide individualized support to each family. You know, it's so important for us that they feel heard, they feel held, and they're supported every step of the way, and they feel like they're in a safe place with us. So how do we help? So we work with families to validate their feelings. We provide at-home activities. So you'll see Katie in the middle at the bottom with one of our little boys and providing some messy play activities. We have a neonatal trauma therapy team here, and we work in collaboration with them. So a lot of our parents will receive counselling therapy or EMDR, and we work alongside the therapists to make sure that we can kind of manage the day-to-day struggles of families and that the therapy is there to use to process the trauma. We offer families a safe space to talk. We provide advocacy support. So if we need to go to any teams around the family meetings or speak to healthcare professionals on their behalf, we do that. Again, any appointment support, any practical support. So if families are struggling to leave the house, we work with them to get them out of the house, as well as mindfulness. And we have a load of different kind of training that we use, from infant yoga and massage to tummy time practitioners. We're all trained in the Brazelton newborn behavioural observations to help support bonding and attachment, infant sensory development, neonatal trauma-informed care, and more. I think we're a little bit. Oh gosh, that's been a bit crazy. There we go. So here's some examples of our peer support here. We do home visits, we go out to parks, we do yoga in the garden, we take families out for walks, and we've always got a camera in our hand to capture loads of wonderful moments between parents and babies. I don't need to explain to everyone on here, I don't think, what is neonatal mental health, but I always kind of like to touch on the types of worries that we deal with at Leo's. So we cover everything from birth trauma, PTSD, any high levels of anxiety, any vicarious trauma. We find a lot of the time that parents who are in intensive care or high dependency or special care will often kind of take on the trauma of the baby next to them or the family that they're, you know, really becoming close friends with. We look after grief, so whether that's grieving the loss of your pregnancy, your birth experience, or your maternity and paternity leave, and diagnosis. So if you're on the NICU and you've been told that your baby's had a brain bleed and you don't know what that might look like, or that they need to go for genetic testing, we support with that as well. Hopefully this will move along. Doesn't like to move for me tonight. There we go. Any re-traumatization we cover as well. So families who are readmitted to hospital, you know, the noises, the alarms, the sounds, the smells, or if you're going back into paediatric intensive care, that can just set off a whole load of triggers for parents. Social isolation, so you know, struggling to get out the house. Any relationship troubles, often we will look after both parents or both carers within the relationship to make sure that they're both well supported. Any struggling to sleep, lots of families we find are fearful that the baby will die during the night, so we help with sleep and getting them the support there. Any OCD type symptoms around cleanliness and practicing strict hygiene, and any disassociation. A lot of families we find look at their child as a patient rather than their actual child, as a way to protect themselves. So we work with them to give them the best support possible to make those bonds. So we like to call our community, I guess, a tribe. So how do we support everyone? So I've touched on our peer support work. We have psychological support, so you'll meet our therapy team in a second, and our community care, which provides loads of opportunities of early intervention and opportunities for reduction of social isolation. So this is little Zelda. One of the lovely things we got to do before Christmas was loads of home visits, where we got to make loads of memory making kits with families. So we visit at home, we visit in the hospital, we go for outdoor walks, we provide telephone calls or email support. And like I touched on before, we're all trained in the high risk Brazelton newborn behavioural observation. So this allows us to provide insight into how babies communicating and their likes and dislikes and how they're finding the world. So here's our therapy team here. So we have Jackie, Rick and Denise, and we cover a whole range of things within neonate. So we cover birth trauma, your neonatal stay itself, any PICU admissions, any hospital admissions, any diagnosis. Unfortunately, we see a lot of palliative care come through our doors, neonatal loss, and any pregnancy anxiety for any subsequent pregnancies, or pregnancies where, you know, there's a likelihood of having a baby who requires neonatal care. So we offer person-centered counselling, bereavement counselling, EMDR. Our team are trained in the flash technique, which is a type of EMDR, creative therapy and high CBT, as well as wrapping around care with our mentor team. So just moving on quickly to community care. We do loads of things in the community. It's one of my favourite things to do, is to be at a group with our family. So we offer kind of everything from swimming to messy play to baby yoga and massage, musical classes, sensory sessions and first aid, and everything there has mentor support or is run by a mentor. So whenever families are coming to see us, the people who are supporting them running those classes are either our team with lived experience or our mentors are there alongside the providers. One of our most recent really successful projects was called Aqua Cubs, and we created a bespoke swimming program for families who were either straight out of NICU or had older children with sensory needs, providing loads of opportunities to have positive touch with their parents or carers, allowing for parents and carers to create magical memories, providing peer support in the pool. So this picture here with the lovely lady with red hair is Kirsty, and the lady next to her is Katie, one of our peer mentors. So we're always in the pool every Tuesday morning with our swimming costumes on and our phones, taking loads of pictures and capturing loads of magic. So as I said, yeah, the swimming sessions that we run, we're in the pool every Tuesday morning. We use our infant Q work to make sure that babies are enjoying the pool, that there's lots of positive touch. So the babies are getting the best wellbeing support that they can. Mums, dads, carers, grandparents are in the pool as well. They're having lots of skin to skin. They're having loads of great memory making. Everyone's kind of cheery. And then if we see for any reason that a parent isn't feeling too great that day or is feeling overwhelmed, then the mentors are on hand in the pool. They just say, do you want to come over here? And then we just take them aside and they get the support they need. And then afterwards we all go for coffee and cake in the coffee shop. So it's lovely. And families just get to have that time together and forge friendships.
Thank you so much, Lottie. That was wonderful. It's really, I think your website tells the story of the work that you do, but actually when you hear it all together like that, it's absolutely fabulous. Thank you so much for coming and sharing tonight. So we're going to move on to our next speaker, who is Laura. I know Laura's here, and so Laura Godfrey-Isaacs is the creator of the wonderful maternal journal, which I know that a lot of you will have seen. Laura is a midwife. She's an activist. She's an artist. And I am very pleased to have her here tonight. Thank you, Laura. I'll share your...
So, yeah, I wanted to do a very quick introduction to Maternal Journal. As was said, it's a project that I set up in 2017 and have been co-producing with this lovely team that you can see here ever since. Our first pilot workshop, a lot of the women and the mothers that were involved have stayed involved, and now we call them our founding mothers, and they've co-produced now the project with us, you know, going forward. So could I have the next slide? So the project is based around the idea of journaling. It might be something you're more familiar with if I was to talk about a diary or a sketchbook, but really journaling is a kind of a catch-all phrase that kind of gives you that umbrella term, and you can see some journals there on display up on the top right hand corner, and you can see the variety of ways that people are using their journal. So they're writing, they're drawing, they're sticking things in, photographs as well, drawing, printmaking, often a lot of collage. So it embraces all these different forms, and what's lovely is that when you introduce people to all these different forms, they find their own way to journal. Next slide, please. Now, this is an image that we use. It's almost like a signature image for the project. We initially set up the workshops in order to bring people together, to journal together, to provide a safe space where they could really start to process their experiences of motherhood, of being a parent. And this image, which was created by one of those first founding mothers, really shows this kind of range of emotions that she was going through. And I think in many ways it represents what all of us go through as parents. From on the left-hand side, the darker feelings and thoughts and experiences with the rain and the clouds, and then on the right-hand side, the sun coming through and those moments of light, those moments of joy. And really, whatever your experience, however dark some of your moments might be, there are also moments of joy. And I think when I was listening to that first speaker talking about the experience of being in NICU, even despite some of the sort of very harsh aspects of being a parent in that experience, there are also very, very beautiful moments and very special moments that you have with your child. Next slide, please. Now, when we set up Maternal Journal, it was really to, as I say, create this safe space. And so when someone is facilitating a group such as myself and all of the facilitators now that we have running groups all over the world, we very much encourage people to journal alongside the group and to be very open and to share your own experiences as well. So this is a journal page from actually my own experiences. My second child was in NICU for 6 weeks. She was born premature, and she also had a major operation. So I've shared that experience with a lot of you that are here tonight. And this journal page was created from one of our journaling guides, which was thinking about sound, thinking about a soundscape and how often our memories are very caught up with sort of sounds and music, and all sorts of things can trigger a memory. And so I made this journal page, which was very much about that experience of being in NICU. Someone was saying earlier, about the intense noises there of the machines and the beeps and the alarms and the babies crying and people talking. And so this was actually a really cathartic piece for me to make. Next slide, please. I've also gone on to make some other work about that neonatal experience. excuse me, I have a cold, so my voice is a little croaky. And this was some some paintings I made from photographs that I took at the time when my daughter had just come out of that major operation. Next slide. And this is another one of her wrapped up in some of those NHS towels, and this kind of memories that I had of kind of holding her, doing kangaroo care, and also her being kind of bundled up with all of these towels. Next slide. So journaling, as I suggested, is an opportunity for people to process their experiences. The way we do it is to bring people together so that they can also share, listen to others, get a mirror up to their own experiences. And I think that this time of becoming a parent, particularly if it's your first experience, is such a time of change, that there's so much to process, all the physical changes, the emotional changes, but it's also, because of that, an opportunity for one to look back on one's own parenting, to look forward in the way that one might think about how one wants to be a parent in the future. It's a time often of very vivid dreams, of very vivid experiences. And so having an outlet to express those experiences can be really important. And particularly if you have the sort of experiences that I've had, and many of you have, and the mothers that we're talking about here have had in the neonatal unit, you know, experiences of being separated from your child, a lot of anxiety about your child, a lot of things to try to understand, lots of medical processes and procedures going on. The journal can provide you with a space to try and express how you're feeling, to try and process what's happening, and also in many ways is a document of what happened. What many years again, when one looks back and you forget how far you've come. And someone again at the beginning was talking about their child now being the tallest in the class. My daughter also is 5'9", and yet she was a tiny little baby at the time. And yet, you know, lovely to look back and see all of those experiences and how she's thrived, and we've kind of moved on and integrated all those experiences into our kind of story of being a parent. Next slide, please. So maternal journal is really for anyone that has been pregnant or has given birth or identifies as a mother. We have run groups for you know, particular communities. We have had interest in running groups with parents that have children in NICU. We've got some LGBT groups. We've also been running groups in mother and baby units. And we've also run groups with people that have experienced pregnancy loss. So we introduce people to all different ways of journaling, and you don't need any prior experience or skills to get involved. Next slide. So a journaling group is normally quite a small group, somewhere between 6 and maybe 15 mothers or birth parents that come together. We have people sometimes that are pregnant or they're on the 2nd or 3rd pregnancy. We've got people with babies. Sometimes we have groups with babies up to 1 year old, so they not actually moving, but they very much shared care within the group. Some groups also like to invite any mother or birth parents, so that we might even have grandparents coming into the group. It's a place to come and be valued, to explore your creativity. It's not about practical parenting, it's very much about the parents. And it's also a place where you can find connection with other parents and create a community around you. Next slide. So I was talking earlier about journaling guides. So these are guides that we mostly commission from artists, though also we have doulas, midwives, therapists, and other professionals that have created journaling guides for us. And they tend to be step-by-step guides. So we very much hold your hand, we introduce you to different techniques, but it's always at a pace that you can go and explore your own creativity and not feel that you need to, you know, have some particular experience. Many people, unfortunately, their creativity was perhaps stymied at school. Often people come into groups and they've been told by teachers or others, oh, you can't draw, you can't write, and people carry that around with them. We believe that everyone is creative, and we're not setting people up to try and create art where they're going to be judged by the quality of what they produce in those terms. What we're doing is applauding everyone's creativity and encouraging everyone to use creativity as a way to boost their own self-esteem and find a way of processing their experiences. Next slide. I'm just going to quickly talk about one of the nice aspects of journaling, which is that it has a very powerful feminist history. So often before, particularly women could more easily, as they do now, become artists or writers or journalists. Keeping a diary was an acceptable form for a woman to express herself, to document social and political things that were going on in her life and around her. And often you'll look at historical diaries and see that they were written very much for the audience in mind. And so that kind of strong history of women's diary making is something that's really nice to connect people to in this project. Next slide. So you can see here just a few examples. The earlier slide was a sketchbook kept by artist Frida Kahlo throughout her life. Here you can see other people who have made very important diaries. Virginia Woolf, the writer, 20th century writer, she saw the diary or the journal as a way for her to be more playful with her writing. Ida B. Wells very much documented what was going on socially around her, was a suffragist, was also very much documenting what her experiences were as a Black woman at the time. And so many of these diaries are really important social documents. Next slide. Just a few slides now just to show you examples of some of our groups. Due to the pandemic, most of our work went online. And initially we were concerned that we would lose some of the intimacy, some of the trust that builds up in a group, a face-to-face group. But actually what it does is it provides opportunities for people to engage with the project who might have other barriers to taking part, either geographical or social, financial, other types of barriers. And so actually they run very successfully now online. And this is a group that runs regularly in Argentina. Next slide. And here just some lovely pictures of people from workshops with their journals. And you can see that the sort of pride that people have in what they've created. It's a very important aspect of the project where people are sharing their work together and getting a lot of sense of pride in what they're doing. But also because we generally use a journal, which is a book that people can journal, obviously using their phone and online and whatever works for them, you can also keep that private. So it's a private space for yourself as much as also a space where you can be public and share what you're doing. Next slide. And you can see here on the right, when babies and children are present, we often have little areas of the space where the children can be relaxed and interact with each other. And then often the mothers are also sitting there and writing their journals, as well as also keeping an eye on their children. And that we're a great believer in children should be in the room, and that mothers can be doing their writing, their work, and the mothers can help them and share that care load together. Next slide. And just on the left-hand side, this is one of the specialist OTs that works in a mother and baby unit. And she's been running successful maternal journal sessions for about a year now. So the format is quite flexible. It can work with groups with children. It can work with people that are in specialist services. We've also run quite a few projects with perinatal services as well, with the outpatients. Next slide. So just a nice quote from someone about what I was talking about before, about all these huge changes that we go through, and often also if one has a child in NICU, all these added unexpected pressures and experiences that we have to manage and process, and how journaling and being in a journal group particularly can really help with that. Next slide. So I just wanted to flag up that we actually in 2021 produced a book, and that's being used by our workshop leaders throughout the world. And it's something that can also be a companion for anybody that wants to journal on their own. And there's also guidance in there about how to run, set up and run a group. So it's very much a democratized format. We have a website as well, if I could have the next slide. Maternaljournal.org, and on there you'll find a lot of free journal guides that you can download and use. So you don't need to buy the book. There's lots of free resources on a website. There's also a toolkit there which has a step-by-step guide about how you can set up and run your own group. We also have inspiration tab with lots of suggestions of books and journals that you can look at for inspiration. And if you want to buy a copy of the book, if you just search Maternal Journal book, you'll find it on Amazon and through our publisher, Pinter and Martin. Thank you. And yeah, if you want to get in touch with me, just go via the website, and you'll find my email there, laura@maternaljournal.org.
Thank you so much, Laura. Just wonderful, wonderful to see all the pictures as well. I'm glad we got there in the end with the PowerPoint.
Thank you.
And thank you so much. Well, maybe see if we could maybe pop those links into the chat for everybody. I'm sure a lot of people will want to follow that up. Okay, without further ado, because the time is marching on, I'm not sure if Neil Patel, there he is, fabulous. Neil, I'm going to give you 5 minutes. I know it's a challenge. Are you got slides to share, or?
Yeah, I'm going to try and share my screen just now, so hopefully.
While you're doing that, I'll introduce you properly. So Neil Patel is a consultant neonatologist, and he is one of the co-designers of vCreate, which is a secure videoing application to keep families in contact with each other, babies in NICU and families at home. There we are. Okay, thank you.
Brilliant, thanks very much. Hopefully you can see my screen, the slides okay. A total pleasure to be here with you all tonight, and just been blown away listening to everyone's experiences, and really privileged to hear those actually, and also to hear about all the resources and creativity that people are applying in the neonatal unit. Huge inspiration for us here in Glasgow, I'm sure, along with everybody else. So I'm going to talk briefly about vCreate. Some of you may have heard about it already. It's been a great story for me personally, but hopefully something that is having an impact for other people as well. Have to begin by crediting everybody else who's a part of this, including all the team at vCreate, who are the industry partner who helped us to co-develop this. I'm not directly involved with the company. We're the clinical partner on this innovation. So the story really starts with our collaboration of families and staff within the neonatal unit here at the Children's Hospital in Glasgow, what we call a hug team, helping us grow. And this is an opportunity where we really want to hear from families about their experience, but also their ideas about how we can improve and involve them more in the care of their babies, both while they're in the neonatal unit, but at any times when they might not be able to be there with their child. And one of the fathers who came to that group was a mechanic at a local dealership. He was having to go back to work, but his son remained an inpatient in the intensive care unit. And he said, look, if your car comes into the workshop, we've got a system where we send you videos and you get to meet the technician. And we think it sets up a good relationship with our clients. And he said, can you not send me a video of my baby when I can't be there? Because it might do the same for me as a parent. Obviously, there's strict guidance and regulatory aspects of us sharing any information with families, and we couldn't just use sort of proprietary platforms like WhatsApp or email. So we managed to connect with this company vCreate, who had a secure cloud-based system for sharing videos. They were using it with commercial clients, had never used it in a health setting, but we were able to adapt it and trial it with families in our unit in 2017. Here you see one of my colleagues, Ainsley, making short video on the iPad. Typically, these are videos that are about 1 or 2 minutes long. The staff get really creative with them as well. They can add text to them, they can add effects. They'll often put music on, which is personal to that family. And typically they're sending them at night when the family can't be there, or maybe when there's other reasons for separation because of health or geography. So we trialed the system in 2017 in our unit, and the response we got from families was just phenomenal. And it just took off from there. And just to give you a sense of the scale of it now, it's in over 130 neonatal centres globally and spreading every day, being used by over 50,000 families, over 500,000 interactions on the system. And because of multi-language ability that's been added to it in the past year, it means that actually families can access it in any number of 12 languages at present. And it also means that when we send them a message, it gets automatically translated into that language. So it adds a whole new level of functionality to the service. I'm going to share with you the thoughts of one parent who used the service, not in our centre, but in another centre. And it just gives you a sense of the impact that it has for them. Just takes a few seconds for this to start. Hopefully you can hear it okay.
Hi, I just basically want to say thank you to VCreate, because when my son Max was in the NICU, it was a very, very hard time, but at Darren Valley Hospital, they used you guys and your product, and it was just amazing, especially when you're having a bad time. Just to receive a message or a picture or a video just really keeps you going. There's just one time that really sticks out in my mind, and I was up in the middle of the night. It's about 3 a.m. and I wasn't doing very well expressing, and I felt very alone and very sad, and just felt very useless at the time, that I couldn't carry my baby full term, and now I can't produce his milk, and I was in a very, very low place. And then a video popped up, and it was him moving and kicking his legs, and that just kept me going, to know that he was fighting, so I needed to carry on fighting and not give up. Just thank you to you guys for keeping us going, and you don't realise how something so simple can keep your spirits so high and just give you a little bit of hope every night when you're having a bad day.
Those thoughts that Leanne shared there were just phenomenal, but they were also replicated by families across the country when we did an evaluation across 5 different neonatal units in the country using the system. And what was really striking to us, and we hadn't predicted, was that impact it was having in terms of supporting mums to express breast milk when they couldn't be with their wee one, and also just helping the whole family to share in the experience and reduce their stress and anxiety. And what's been just another phenomenal part of this is seeing the positive impact it has for neonatal teams, and how all of us enjoy having this new level of interactivity with families and sharing with them. These are just some tweets from other units all over the country and other parts of the world who use the system as well. So thanks very much for listening. I want to thank everybody who's been involved in the project, including all the families who do so much to support the service as well, and all of the neonate units. And if you'd like to hear more, feel free to drop me a line. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Neil. It was wonderful to hear that personal account as well of using the VCreate. Thanks for keeping to 5 minutes. That was incredible, amazing. I know you're on call, and thank you very much for coming along. And last but not least, without further ado, I'm going to introduce Rebecca Chilvers. The very patient Rebecca Chilvers has waited till the end and was on at the beginning. She's a consultant psychologist, and she's going to tell us about some of the work that she does in leading psychology services.
Thank you so much for having me, and I've been to thank my children as well, because they're downstairs watching Pokemon while I'm here. Just so much to take in, connection, community, resonance so far. So I just want to spend a bit talking about as quickly as possible about some of the work that I do. So I was relatively new to working in neonates when I walked past a nursery late one evening, and the unit had become quiet, dark, and the bright lights of central London lit the back rooms. And through the glass door, I saw a mother standing with her arms and her whole body over the baby's incubator, embracing the Perspex, whispering and quietly singing to him. And I passed by, and I went to finish some notes and gather my thoughts on the day. And I found myself walking down the same corridor some time later. She hadn't moved. And that image has stayed with me my whole career, a mother's love in the most difficult of circumstances, amongst the barriers, amongst the fear and the unknown, but also an intimate moment happening in a busy hospital, a moment that would usually be in the privacy and safety of home. In time, this image found words, but in those moments, so many of which have been wonderfully illuminated in this exhibition and contributors, these experiences are also captured by our senses, documented by our bodies as well as our minds, and call out for the creative expression of an experience that affects every element of who we are as human beings. And when we bring all of this together as a community, we can only grow from the richness and connections that follow. So I've got 5 offerings for today, just my perspective, gathered from many years of talking to parents who are always our greatest teachers. And whilst I work with families and staff, I'm going to focus mainly on mothers today. What we're really talking about is the power of relationships with others and, of course, with ourselves. So the first thing is we need to meet people where they're at and understand where they come from. And you all know that the journey for becoming a mother in neonates has many different starting points and trajectories. A mother who's finally been able to hold her baby after years of fertility difficulties. A mother who's meeting her baby who she knows won't live long. A mother who's getting to know a different baby to the one she expected. A mother who didn't know her own mother or was afraid of her. Here she becomes, and in this interfaces with an environment that for most is like falling into a different world. So the first thing is, let me draw alongside, let us all draw alongside, let me walk with you a bit and get to know what's happening, no assumptions, and help me to understand this process for you. The second thing is things can be difficult and that's not your fault. So let's just think about forming a connection and a relationship with your baby as an example. There are many barriers, both in the external and internal world, to think about. And we often think about the external ones, and so much excellent work has gone into removing these the best that we can. But I want to highlight this evening those that are less visible. Often shame, guilt, anger, jealousy, amongst others, can lead us to feel that those parts of us or those feelings can't be shared. And as psychologists, we want to come and be able to come with an approach that says, all feelings and thoughts are valid and make sense. We just might need a bit of time to make that sense together. We often spend time normalizing things too. For example, I'm afraid of my baby. I don't feel they're real, or I'm frightened to feel anything for them. And we recognize it's really hard to name these things, particularly when there's fear. Will you judge me? Will you think I can't do it? So creating a space for internal experience to be heard and sense making without fear of judgment is really important to make time for. And then we can work out how to help. The third thing is everything's connected. If we can help mothers to feel contained, supported, connected and attuned to, safe, have agency and hold hope, even at the most difficult time when they may not be able to hold it for themselves, they will then in turn be more able to be in a place, of course at their own pace, where they can provide these things for their baby. And if we equip staff to truly feel these things too, they can provide this for parents. So we want to think about this at a universal level. What can we put in place for everyone who comes onto a NICU, but also to be thinking about who needs extra help and when. So this is when I think about mothers as needing an intensive care of their own too. It's all connected. We care for the whole family in this period. And we need to do that while we're in NICU, and then we need to do it afterwards, as Lottie talked about, rather than carving up care into what belongs to the baby and what belongs to the parents. We need to continue to hold everyone in mind. The fourth thing is compassion. How we relate to difficulty, adversity, and suffering is key. When I hear what mothers have been through, I often think to myself, wow, that was incredibly courageous. Or you've done what you needed to survive something really traumatic. But what I often hear from them is a critical voice that says, I should have done better. I should be coping, or an invalidating voice that assures me it wasn't that bad. I hear the same from staff too. It's a common theme. As psychologists, we realise we don't, in fact, have that magic wand that people talk about. We often sit alongside extreme suffering and we can't shy away from the reality of what families face. Perhaps what we can help to nurture is a compassionate approach to that suffering, so that at the very least, mothers don't add to what's already so hard by how they relate to themselves. So cultivating self-compassion in the process of becoming a mother on NICU is one of the key elements of the work we do. We think of 3 flows of compassion, from ourselves to others, from others to ourselves, and from ourselves to and the last one, of course, is always the hardest, but the most important. because the longest relationship we have with anyone, even our babies, is with ourselves. And the final thing I want to say, which I think has been said already this evening, is psychologically informed support is for everyone and by everyone. We want to break down the perception that this is them and us when we think about psychological distress. Being on a neonatal unit is hard for everyone, and we need to connect with our shared humanity first and foremost. Everyone who works on a neonatal unit has a role to play in psychological support. It's absolutely not exclusively the domain of psychological professionals. And there are so many here today who do wonderful work and advocacy that hugely enhances the lives of those on their neonatal journey. And this is what gives me huge hope for the future. Change is happening as we all advocate for psychologically informed care, harness the power of relationships, and think about how we use each window of opportunity we're given. So please connect with us and follow our journey. And thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this event and to continue to learn from you all.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. That's a really hard act to follow. It's beautiful and really kind of captures, I think, there's a real connection between the experiences of the participants in the workshops, and what you're saying that you've seen and you've experienced and you've heard. And you'll see this very much mirrored in the exhibition when you're finally able to go and have a look. And look out for the golden cocoon, and you'll hear and see a real connection between what Rebecca was saying and a beautiful poem that was written by one of the participants. Well, because we're really getting to the end of the time now, I'm not sure if there are questions, any burning questions that are in the chat. Rachel, you were keeping a little eye. Are we okay just to move on to the kind of the final, so we don't keep people too late? Or you're on mute? She's having a quick look at
Sorry.
So to do, Rachel.
There were a few smaller questions in the chat that I think got answered within the chat. I don't think there's anything outstanding.
Thank you so much. Okay, I'll just finish up then with all the thanks to everybody. And I really wholeheartedly thank the speakers who've so generously given up their time to speak tonight. So sorry for all the fuss, and it's amazing that you all made it here. All of this unfolded about about 7 o'clock to 15, so it's been a bit of a kind of like whirlwind. But what really comes through in all of your talks tonight is your dedication, your innovation and your activism, and you contributed so much to support the well-being of pregnant people, mothers and families in NICU, and I'm so honoured to have you here tonight. I would like to give thanks to the Institute of Social Science Research at University of Dundee for funding the project, to Pam Dunn, who helped me to navigate my way through research finance when buying tissue paper, fancy threads, muslin, breast pads and the like for the workshops. A huge thanks to Maya Chowdhury, Jessica Howarth and Rachel Bauer, who designed and co-facilitated the creative workshops. A special thanks to Maya for the tech support, which enabled me to pull the exhibition website together. All of you were an absolute pleasure to work with, and you helped to make the workshops a really meaningful and supportive experience for everybody. Lastly, also thanks to my collaborator, Divya Jindal-Snape as well. When I talked to the participants about the responses to the exhibition at our soft launch, they said that although the artwork represented another mother's experience, every single piece resonated in some way with their own experience of NICU, and that it was a very powerful and moving experience. So I just want to ask you to bear this in mind when you're going to visit the exhibition. You might want to take a family member with you or a friend with you when you visit, just as you would if you were going to a physical exhibition, just in case you might need a little bit of support. And most importantly, before we enter the exhibition, I want to wholeheartedly thank the 10 mothers, so it makes me emotional, just ignore me, who generously gave up their time to take part in the research. who they produce these wonderful creative works about mothering in NICU. Their commitment to the project was way beyond my expectations, and in many ways I think it's not surprising given the lack of research about mothering in NICU and exploring the kind of real experiences of mothering. We hope the exhibition will help to communicate these really important hidden aspects that are often hidden, and we're really keen to hear your responses to the work. So please leave a comment on the guest book when you're visiting the exhibition. And let's keep this feeling of connection and community going as we move forward. To all of you in the audience, a big thank you for coming along. Please stay in touch. There's a contact me link on the exhibition page, and so please get in touch if you want to ask anything, or if there's anything you want to raise. And also, just as we come to the end of the launch, I'd ask you to please use a contact form if you'd like to become involved in future work at any capacity, however minimal. And this invites extended to everybody with any interest in NICU mothering in any capacity. Future research is really dependent on involvement, so please email me or use the contact form. Thank you very much. So thanks for coming, everybody, and I hope that you find the exhibition as moving and as powerful as the people who have seen it so far have. Thank you.